Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Women in Math and STEM, where our mission is to reach out to as many professionals, aspiring professionals, students, whatever you name it. We try to reach out to them, who essentially support the initiative of bringing more women and young girls into the STEM field. So, with that being said, as always, feel free to open up the description or transcript to better follow along, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hello, and thank you so much for coming to the call today and talking with me. Just to sort of start off, do you mind introducing yourself as well as sort of walking us through your journey to get you where you are today?
Absolutely. Really happy to be here and to talk to other young people who have questions or interests or just want to know more about the STEM field. My name is Nneka Bolden. I'm a digital producer for Lyla in the Loop, a series airing on PBS Kids. I lead the production of our website, all of our games, and I also lead our outreach efforts. So working on resources for libraries, for teachers, and after school programs. I got into this role uh, from my first job out of college working at PBS. I was an executive assistant, wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I studied advertising and graphic design, thought I was going to be an art director at an ad agency, and realized I didn't really enjoy that through a number of internships. I knew that had interest in creative fields and just wasn't sure what to do with that. And while I was at PBS, I was able to meet folks from different departments when they came in for their finance discussions, learned a little bit about how much it takes to fund digital products and ended up getting really interested in that team. And so I was able to eventually move on to their team. And that's where I learned a lot about the field of digital production for kids. And I loved it. I loved going to schools. I loved testing new games in production with kids. I'd always had an interest in coding, thanks to MySpace and Neopets, where I would I would code my own profile pages and things. Learn CSS and a little bit of HTML5. So always had an interest and didn't realize that the creativity, I also always loved kids and cartoons. I just didn't realize that that could all come together in one kind of job. And I've bounced around. I've worked at Sesame Street and a number of other kids companies and been very lucky. But I identify myself as a woman in STEM. And I always was afraid that I wasn't technical enough, and that couldn't be more further from the truth. Uh, so that's a little bit about how I got here.
I just wanted to ask, since I think you mentioned you studied, I think, advertising and marketing in college. I was just wondering, like, coming from like a different background or like not like studying STEM in college, how has that sort of like improved or like changed your approach when it comes to like coding or like your job?
Yeah, that's a great question. While I didn't study STEM or computer science, I always had an interest in it. So again, different web games I would always play and be coding. I did take some courses online. There's freecodecamp.org is a really great nonprofit, and I took some of their courses to learn more about coding. And just as I progressed in my career, I realized that there are many different types of managers on tech teams. There are some who are more like engineering managers and who do have a coding background and can work very closely with engineers. And then there's people like me who have experience in research and just generally have soft skills around how to manage teams, how to help develop ideas and get to MVP products. And so I had an interest in STEM, and I was nervous I couldn't really lead. And then the more and more I learned, the more I realized it's about managing a team, about trusting people with skills that you might not have to help lead and working collaboratively together. So I have learned more and more how creative a field STEM is. And it's just opened up so many cool opportunities, like working on games for Lyla in the Loop, working on a game about doing your hair and the steps involved in that kind of process, which is like an algorithm and a sequence where you have to go step by step, to wash your hair, to use different conditioners and stuff. And so that's an idea that I have. And we have a game coming out about wash day routines that'll be launching next year. So I very much am in the STEM field. I work so closely with very technical engineers, and we work together to really create exciting and fun and novel kind of experiences for kids.
Sounds good. That sounds really cool, actually. I was also just wondering, like, as a sort of digital producer, what a day in your life looks like.
Yeah, that's a great question. Most of my family doesn't understand what I do. So as a producer, you really are spearheading and guiding the production of a game. So there are many different milestones. You get together with your team, you understand the different roles that you all have. There's generally some kind of concept that you have. So, for example, um, with the hair game, we knew that we wanted to take kids through the steps of doing hair. We knew that there were apps like Toca Boca Hair Salon that were very popular. And so we knew that there was something there about the representation of Lila's curly afro, about taking through the steps and sequencing, which is a part of our computational thinking curriculum. And we had, rough sketches and ideas. So we worked with a development studio, Curious Media, who are based in Idaho, and got together and we started off prototyping. So putting together sketches, really rough versions of the game, using our own audio as the VO, so talking as Lyla or Stu, just so kids could play and get a chance to understand it. And throughout development, we've gotten to what's called an alpha, a beta, packed in more and more features into the game. Once through research, we validated that kids were having fun, they were understanding what they were doing. We've learned that through this game, kids learned how to braid. So those who have never braided hair before, it's a looping pattern. And loops are very important in computational thinking. It's repeating something over and over that a computer does. And so similarly with your hair, when you're doing your braid, you have to do the same kind of pattern over and over. So that was really exciting for us to show that kids were learning and having a good time. But a day in the life with that kind of stuff is we have these concepts. I'm meeting with different teams. So the engineers, I'm meeting with artists, I'm reviewing episodes. I get to watch TV for my job. So seeing if there's any storylines or cool art from the series that we could use in the game. Meeting with different teams, talk about music, putting a script together. I'm editing the script, making sure that we have VO that is helpful and kids understand it and helps them, tap the play button to begin. Those are things we all have to script out and get translated. So it's really exciting because I get to talk to so many different types of people. And that is something that I think I love about being a producer. It's every day is a little different. But there's lots of interesting conversations that we're always having.
Sounds good. I was also just curious about like when you guys run into like a problem or a challenge or just like creative differences or just like some sort of thing that's like difficult to sort of like work around, how do you sort of go about it to like find a solution or like continue working?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it comes up on any team. I remember in college or high school having group projects, it's the same even now. And so you really have to lean into, okay, what's most important to me? You do pick your battles. There's so much when it comes to creative projects where a lot of people feel strongly about certain things. And I often check in with myself. How strongly do I feel about this? Is this something where, it's just going to make the team happier if we make this decision? At the end of the day, I am the producer, so I am the final say on what gets put into the game, you know. But there are certain things where I realize there are other people who have more experience and can make better judgments or calls. So something is a little too technical. Um, for example, to load a game on a website, it can't be too big of a file. and you want to put so much stuff into the game, so much music and sound effects and animation. But the more and more that you put in, the bigger and bigger the game is, which means it takes longer and longer to load. So oftentimes there's all these things I want to add in because they're so fun. I want to add in more animation, more music. And what I have to have a conversation with this engineering team, at what point, like, what are the biggest files? And so I have to often make decisions on, okay, it's too much music. We only need one track, or maybe we just need to flip flop between two. So those are kind of conversations that I'll talk to the team about to make the decision. But I try to lean on other people's expertise. If it's a discussion we're having about scripting or language, I'll lean on the writers. When it comes to the overall general feeling that I want for the game, I'm going to make the final decision. So you really have to trust the roles that you have on your team and sometimes step back and allow other people to make those decisions.
Okay, sounds good. I think you also mentioned that you worked with like outreach as well as like focusing on representation when it came to like, for example, the hair braiding game. I was just wondering like what are some good ways to go about outreaching, reaching other people as well as sort of like representing identities, especially to like younger kids.
Yeah, well, I think you are one example of what you should do, which is be proactive. I think you saw me speak on a webinar for the Department of Education and messaged me on LinkedIn, and it just seemed like such a great opportunity. And so I often, through outreach, do the same. There are webinars I attend, conferences that I attend. I just see things on the internet that I think are fascinating and interesting and reach out to people to see if we can have a conversation, if I could do some type of informational. I actively do that every week and just have conversations to see if there's anything that we can do together. Um, I also, through the conferences that I attend, I pick and choose ones that I think will have people that we have a lot of similar, mission alignment. So I go to a lot of conferences that are focused for teachers, for women in STEM. So I speak, I make sure that I'm active at those conferences and meet people. I have a digital business card so we can stay connected. I definitely connect with people on LinkedIn and utilize that for networking. And then I talk to people about what they need in their classrooms and figure out what we can do. So, Lila in the Loop is an educational series, and there are just cool things that I think we can bring to classrooms. So, the Loops family own a diner. We have a game that's all about fulfilling orders. And then I think, well, what would be fun in a library or an after school program? So, I work with curriculum writers to make games that kids can play in the real world about this kind of stuff. And it all comes from feedback of teachers like, we need more games during the transition period between, getting out of school and coming to after school program. So it's like, okay, what kind of games can we make up that are around food and kind of help kids understand even more of what we're trying to teach?
Sounds good. Just to sort of end off, I wanted to ask if you had any pieces of advice, recommendations, suggestions, resources, honestly anything for students who are interested in pursuing something like STEM, coding, digital production, advertising, marketing, honestly, just like any career in the future.
Yeah. I think you should definitely lead with what excites you and be brave. I think I always heard of STEM in the past and just was worried, that I wasn't a coder per se, and it always made me feel like I couldn't do it. I was pretty okay at math class when I was in high school. I did all right. I took some AP classes, but I very much tended to like my arts classes a little bit more. So the idea of going into STEM just seemed like it didn't align, and that couldn't be more incorrect or further from the truth. So I would say like notice what you're interested in, what really excites you, because you can build a life from that. And there are so many different types of jobs and careers in that. I never knew. I have a friend who um, studied chemistry and she makes makeup for Maybelline. There's a lot of really fascinating types of jobs that bring together all sorts of interests. And so I ended up in children's media. I've always loved kids. I've always loved creative things and cartoons. And I did have some interest in coding or making web pages. So it's been really great to find this role for myself. And initially, I didn't know what to do. When I went to college, I was a photography major. Then I studied marketing and advertising, and then ended up not wanting to go into that field. So it all was a learning experience, and this job has kind of brought all of those together. But I think, yeah, be brave and look at what excites you and go after that, and you'll find so many different types of careers for that.
Okay, thank you so much for once again coming to this call and sharing your story and experience. It was really amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Impact Learners. And I also just wanted to give a shout out to CPB and PBS for funding us and the Department of Education. And you can check out PBS Kids and Lila in the Loop. Thank you.